Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Brian Finnerty with Macabre Daily. I'm coming at you with another Skeletons in the Closet interview where we like to explore everything queer about the horror world. And I pretty much could not ask for a better person to have this conversation with today. Being joined by Dr. Heather Petrocelli, who is like I don't know, the preeminent expert on queer horror. You literally wrote the book about it.
Yeah.
Published Queer for Fear, horror film, and The Queer Spectator. Thank you so much for being here, Heather. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Uh, Pretty good. I'm feeling today is a good day, I think, and I'm happy to be here with you. So thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. I'm so excited. And if I did not say this before we started recording, but if it wasn't obvious, I'm actually like a little intimidated talking to you almost. I'm one of these people dipping my toes into this world of queer horror. And then when we exchanged messages and I was like, oh, we can do an interview and I can talk to you. It's almost like what could I possibly have to contribute to this conversation?
Don't be intimidated at all. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun, and I will spend my time like in the process of doing my research. I had to kind of go into therapy because I have a whole
Mhm.
chapter on trauma,
Yeah.
and there is a whole school of, people who use cinema in therapies, but there's not ones who really use horror specifically.
Mhm.
So I will spend my time being like, so Brian, when are you going to write that book?
That's perfect. That's perfect because as we said, I'm a therapist. I spend all my day asking people questions. I need someone to turn the tables on me every once in a
Yes.
while.
Yes. Happy to do so.
So yeah, Heather, before we get like too much into the specific book, I always like to just spend a few minutes just getting to know people generally, and especially kind of your journey to the horror world. Um, I know one of the questions you asked in your study was, how long have you been a horror fan, and when did you first become a horror fan? How would you have answered that question?
You're gonna like call me out and like I think when you're designing a survey, there's all kinds of methodology go into, and I kind of broke all the rules. Like, you know, I think I was told I shouldn't have a survey that was more than like 15 to 20 questions. And if you go like count all of the questions and sub questions, I think I asked 144. With that question, I think one of the like one of the answers was as basically as far back as I can remember.
Hmm.
Because that would be me. Like that's how I would have
That's you.
answered it. I didn't take my survey because you're not supposed to, but in hindsight, I think that's it's like I get why they don't want the researcher doing their own study, but also I am a horror loving queer and I wouldn't have like cheated. So I also feel like fuck, I should have taken my own survey. But that's how I would have answered it.
I'm
As
sure you
far
did unofficially though. Like as you're creating all the questions, I mean,
This is true.
how do you make a question without answering it for yourself, right?
No, yeah, exactly. Like that question was it because I was like, well, fuck, I don't remember the exact like age I was, but I have no memory of not like being drawn to the macabre and to the dark.
Mm,
Always.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I'm similar, and like which makes it hard to answer that question, right? People always want to know what's your origin story, and it's
Yeah.
like I literally don't remember. It's just always been there.
Yeah. I just always go with the Wicked Witch of the West. Because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I think she might have been, I think she might be my origin story, but also what do you do when you're a little human who like even like Saturday morning cartoons when you see graveyard scenes, like that kind of stuff. Like I just always loved that stuff. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So I like kind of a similar origin story, but kind of getting into the next level of it. Do you have any sense of when did you first start connecting kind of queer identity with horror? Um,
I mean, it's actually easy for me to answer that one. I mean, the harder answer was like I always was curious. So I'm like solid Gen X. You can see my gray hairs. Like I was raised at a time when, AFAB, like little girls weren't supposed to like horror. It was a boys
mhm.
genre, blah, blah, blah. And I always knew that like I just fucking loved it. I loved horror. I just, was always drawn to it, but I couldn't kind of quite figure it out. And then let's see, I guess I was in my early 20s.
Mhm.
after I was in, whatever, doesn't matter. I moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
And when I moved to San Francisco, a friend got me a job at the Bridge Theater. The Bridge Theater
Mhm.
at the time was managed by a man named Joshua Grinnell, who is Peaches Christ.
Jesus Christ,
And
yes.
so Joshua and I became really good friends, and we've remained good friends. And there's a thing called Midnight Mass that, Peaches was the hostess of. It's Joshua's event. And I remember sitting in that first audience as an audience member, not working it. I wound up working midnight masses a lot, but I always made sure to also always retain being an audience member. And
Hmm.
I just remember sitting in that audience of like mostly queer people watching a horror film for the first time and just having like that like lightning bolt strike hit of like, oh fuck. Like this is what I've been missing my whole entire, I mean, yeah, I was only like fucking like 21, 22 something, but like that was what I had been missing my whole life, it felt like, is being around queer people who appreciated the genre the way I appreciated the genre, who
Hmm.
laughed at the same things.
Yes, which were probably not the things that the mainstream audience was
Correct.
laughing at, if they
Correct.
were laughing at all.
I mean, it still happens. I mean, like now I'm in my 50s and it still fucking happens. I still go to horror movies all the time, sometimes with my partner who I've like kind of forced into being a horror person. Like now
Uh-huh.
she's like, she'll talk sometimes. I'm like, oh, I've like completely made her like she knows horror. She understands the genre. But I
Doing
also sometimes just go to horror films alone still. And I still will like laugh alone and I'll be the only
Mhm.
one in the theater laughing. And I know that if there was a bunch of queer people in with me, we'd
So,
be laughing together.
so I know before we recorded, you referred to yourself as a chaos demon, which I love. You're that chaos demon that was cackling in the back row of Hereditary during
Oh,
the infamous scene.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm just gonna tell you the story because so so on me, my partner, my wife, she is a horror person. And Hereditary is that's 2016, right?
I think so.
Eh, something like that. So 2016 was a fucked year in lots of ways,
Mhm.
but the marketing campaign of that film was constantly the scariest fucking movie a lot. Like, just like it was so pumped as the scariest thing that
Yeah.
on me was like, sorry, I can't do this one. I'm like, you're on your own.
Uh-huh.
So I went to Hereditary's opening night in Portland, Oregon on my own. And I sat on the edge and I just was watching the movie and totally enjoying the movie. Total
Mhm.
huge Toni Collette fan. And yeah, that fucking dinner table
And
scene
there's
happened.
the laughter.
And I started fucking laughing because it is, and like when I'm laughing, I mean, it's complicated. Like camp relationship to horror, which is something I like talk about, is a
Mhm.
complicated thing because it's genuinely from a place of love. Like
Mhm.
this is like I like was loving. I was like gobbling up that scene. It was
Yeah.
so delicious. But this this straight couple. I guess I had laughed multiple other times. Part of like, laughter is a very complicated thing, as you know, as a therapist. Sometimes it's a
Mhm.
relief valve, sometimes it's a connection point. It's all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I did laugh when the head came off, but that was more of a shock laugh. Like that was like,
Hmm.
I did not know the film was going there. And like in that moment, the games of like the rules of that game had changed. And I was like, I laughed out of like, oh, what's coming on?
Yes.
The dinner table scene was a different kind of laughter, and this couple next to me just fucking whipped their heads around. And the guy finally said, "What is so funny? This is not funny." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, sir, but to me, this is hilarious."
Oh
And
my
so that's one of my favorite stories of just how different the experience could be. And they were, I mean, then the energy between us it
God.
was a palpable tension
Things
between
got
us.
more tense in the theater than it
Because,
was on the
I mean,
screen,
I
which is
didn't
saying
stop
something.
laughing. Like the movie just goes batshit crazy.
It
So,
does.
and I was just there with the movie. I felt like I was enjoying it, but I also know from my study that it's one of the things I love film for. I love film because there are these complex cultural texts and everyone has their own relationship to every single individual text. And that relationship is constantly ongoing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, when I appreciate Hereditary, I'm not scared. I'm not, of course, there's tense moments and there's fucked up shit you're dealing with and you're
Mhm.
dealing with trauma and all that crap. But it's like it's so unhinged that I find delight in it. I find a lot of
Yeah.
delight in it. But younger people, because I asked the question, what's the scariest movie? And they only got to answer one movie. The younger people of the survey, like Hereditary was the number one film.
Okay.
So it's scary. It is a scary movie for a lot of people. So obviously I think that, those people next to me were younger and they were straight. So we just were watching different things.
Oh, totally different experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I love that we stumbled into that anecdote because that just feels like, yeah, the perfect example of why you probably felt pushed to do this kind of study, do
Yeah.
this and to write this book, to really just draw attention to like and you could say this about any different community. You just happen to be saying it about the queer community that just we move through the world differently. We experience everything differently, and
Yeah.
like horror is not going to be an exception.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
period. Yes.
So you talked about working at the Bridge Theater, which like number one, I'm just so jealous. I'm so jealous of people who like their lives converge in that way, right? You just meet this person and like you go on to be this amazing scholar of horror, and Peaches goes on to be this amazing like entertainer and personality in the horror world. It's like, how does that happen? But I digress. Um, that was like your social connection to queer horror. Was the idea of studying it in your mind at that point, like turning it into an academic
No.
endeavor? Yeah.
Nope, no, not at all. Like I was in my 20s then. Uh, I have to give a shout out to my friend Dave, who he was the one who had a job at the bridge. And he was like,
Mhm.
he's like literally a cishet white guy who was like, you and my boss would totally get along because you talk about the same fucking shit all the time. And he was right. And he quit the job and he not that he got me the job, but he
Yeah.
basically opened the pathway for me to get the job. And it was a great time in San Francisco in the 90s,
Mhm.
you know, mid to late 90s. Well, it was called Tranny Shack then, T Shack, which became Mother. Um, you know, Language was different then. It wasn't used as a pejorative. It was like a
Yeah.
very loving, open space.
It's also the horror world and the camp world, right? Like there's no rules there.
Yeah. And it was just such a I think San Francisco in the 90s kind of exploded my head open in so many
Mhm.
ways. And I was not thinking academically at all, in the sense that I had did I finish my undergraduate? It took me a while to I was like busy like living life and doing things.
Well, you were going to midnight movies and
I
staying
was
up
gonna-
until
Yes.
dawn, so you probably
Exactly.
hard to fit
Exactly.
studying in.
Yeah, it was. And I was totally in that world of I think that, the thing that especially for, my age group and older, we
Mhm.
didn't grow up around queer people.
Yeah.
My only connection to the queer community I mean, it sounds so fucking terrible to say, but it took the AIDS epidemic. It was like basically my father was an IV drug user who
Mhm.
was an absentee father. So it's but he wound up dying of AIDS when I was 12. And that was like a kind of galvanizing moment in my little family unit. My little family unit was me, my mom, and my brother. And that was
Yeah.
kind of it. And so we wound up doing a lot of AIDS work from that point on.
Okay.
And then that's a really, that was a really, I don't even know. I literally, I'll lose my shit. So I kind of have to
Yeah.
not talk too
No.
deeply about it. But
Thank you for even being this open. Appreciate that.
yeah, it was, my world was filled with loads of gay men and trans women who you become friends with, you
Mhm.
help, they die. So it's
Yeah.
just like a cycle over and over and over of meeting people who could understand you in a slightly different, like unspoken way. Because I was still a kid, even though I had come out, but as anyone who's queer knows, you come out your whole life. You never stop coming out because every time you have a new interaction, a new job, a new this, a new that, you always have to do the calculus of ugh, will I know this person long enough for that? Do I have to tell them my whole fucking story, or
Even
is
we,
it kind of
before we
clear?
started recording, like had to have our own little mini coming out conversations. It's constantly
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. So it was a that was my first understanding of queerness and the queer
Mhm.
community. so I'm just going to try to like end that on a positive note. And the positive note was getting to see community come together.
Hmm.
Like, and so that was so formative to my young years. And then, you know, yeah, and then San Francisco kind of picked up that gauntlet. And by the time I was doing midnight mass, by the time I was going to T-Shack, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
there were drugs, and it changed the whole scene. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, for the academic side of horror. We gotta like literally fast forward decades. We gotta fast forward.
Yeah.
Like I
When it's
went to,
interesting, just to interject for a second, like at that time, yeah, you weren't thinking about it through an academic lens at all. But what is so apparent in just the little you shared is you knew how important horror was.
yes,
It like yeah, you didn't have the language or the words or the analyses to put onto it. But yeah, you knew it was just like critical in some
yes.
way.
I said this story before, but like I went to a in I still can't remember if it was like 89, 90, 91. I
Mm,
went to a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors because
mm.
like when I got away to college out of like I got out of where I was, going to high school, uh there was like this whole world, and I was like, oh my God, there's fucking horror conventions, like what? And it was an awful, awful, awful experience.
Oh no.
And it was because it was not a queer event. It
Mhm.
wasn't even like I'll just say it was a lot of cishet white men. That's what it was. And they understood the genre very, very, very differently from the way I did. So I had that experience. And then a
Yeah.
number of years later, I had the Midnight Mass experience. So that's why that experience was so galvanizing, even though I didn't know that was an actual galvanizing moment, because I have a whole chapter on it in the book.
Yeah, that
That's how
dragged
galvanizing it
me to
was.
hell.
Yeah,
Love
exactly.
love a good pun.
Yes.
Um, all right. As tempting as it is to talk about this period of life for an hour, we could.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna take your cue and we're gonna fast forward. You're a doctor now. What is your degree in, and how did the journey of doing this dissertation kind of
So
develop?
I I somewhere in my 30s went back to do grad school in history, but I really wanted to focus on film, but that's like a
Mhm.
whole story. And I wound up specializing in uh oral history, public history, and
Mhm.
public memory. And I studied the film, like the development of film education in Portland, Oregon. So I still managed to make it about film.
Yeah.
And then 2016 happened, and I did that in like I don't remember actually when I graduated from that program. But 2016 happened, and 2016, like I said, was a shit year for lots of reasons. And
Yes.
I was one of those dummies who I just didn't think the country I lived in would nominate and then elect Trump.
Yep.
So
And
I,
here we are.
yeah, I like 2016 was like the beginning of the end, right? It was just like, but lots of good things still happen, right? You still have to find clear joy.
Yep.
Uh, and my younger brother died in September, and that was a really like watching your younger brother die, like it's just a fucking hard experience. And I
Yes.
remember we were really tight as kids because we were, Gen X kids in a single parent home. So we were
Mhm.
together a lot. And as we got older, we grew more apart, mainly because of addiction issues.
Yeah.
And still though, looking down at like literally looking down at my dead brother, one of his children had come in. He has three different children. And I
Mhm.
just remember thinking, like, this is so fucked. This is such a fucked experience. But at least
Mhm.
at least he lives on in some kind of way in these kids. And like,
Yeah.
I hope that they each wind up with the best of him in
Yeah.
some capacity. And dealing with his death, then a few months later, dealing with the election. And then throughout the year, it was like, it was like Bowie, Prince, Carrie Fisher, George Michael, like just like
Yeah.
literally my youth was dying. My beloved youth was just all dying.
Yeah.
Like, so everything felt dark and I kind of hit a depression. And my partner is really good at always being like, okay, well, okay, you're depressed. What the fuck are you gonna do about it? Kind of like how are you gonna like channel your energy differently as opposed to spiraling into darkness?
I love her.
Yeah, she's great. And she was like, you need to spend some time thinking about this. And
Mhm.
I don't know how or why. Like I literally don't know how or why, but a study, unpublished dissertation from like
Okay.
1999, I think, came across I don't know how it came to me, so it feels
Yeah.
cosmic at this point. But
Yeah.
Bridget Cherry's study on women in horror
Okay.
came to me, and I read it. And remember, when I finished it, I said to Ami, I was like, you know, really, queer people need one of these.
Hmm.
And she was like, yeah, you think? Maybe you could do that. And I was like,
There it is.
but
There's your path.
yeah, I'm like, I'm not a social scientist. She's like, you'll figure it out. So
So you have to go back to school and become one.
yeah, that's it. And basically the way academia works, because I had been slightly kind of for an academic peripatetic in the sense that like my first degree was in film, which
Mhm.
covered production and theory. Then I went and did a second, like years later after my first BA, I did a second BA in history. Then
Okay.
I did a master's in history, but I wanted to go back into a PhD in film.
Hmm.
And the way academia works, they're like, but you kind of jumped around.
Uh,
And and because it was going to be a very kind of it was going to be interdisciplinary slash transdisciplinary
mhm.
study. Academia likes its silos.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like a lot of institutions, I imagine, just the idea of like kind of pushing outside the boundaries of what we know, looking kind of not just thinking outside the box, but creating an entirely new box. People are probably pretty hesitant to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's like if on my kindest days, it's because they want to make sure they have a mentor that can speak directly to what you're studying in some capacity.
Okay.
So it
But
was
yeah,
going to
that's like
be,
that almost like is a dead end though in some areas because like if that mentor doesn't exist, you
yeah,
have to let somebody do it so
yeah.
that you can create it and then you'll be the mentor to the next generation.
Yeah, it was like so 2016 is when I decided like this would be the thing I would do and it would be a way for me to kind of give something back to my community and to
Okay.
have something that would outlast my like corporeal being in a way. And I think it was directly tied to Keith and his children being like, "Oh, you like made a lot of really bad decisions in life, but you did this."
Yeah.
Even if some of those were bad decisions at the time, these are wonderful humans
Hmm.
and I'm not a person who ever wanted children. So I was like, well, maybe I can make a baby, like make my own baby,
Absolutely. And
my book baby.
what a beautiful baby it is.
Yeah. So, but it took a long time. I started in the US because I'm a US citizen. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, let's go. Let's find the place that will take me.
Yeah.
And it was just place after place after place after place being like, you're not, it's not really a good fit. It's not really a good fit. It's not really a good fit. And then in 2017,
Hmm.
I was watching a documentary about horror, as one does.
Yes.
And
Every time.
this, I got one day Zavi's going to hear me talk about this and be so mad at me. This talking head, it was a documentary. A talking head came on screen, and the moment he came on screen, I was like, oh, that's a gay guy. Because sometimes you just know.
Yes.
And it said his name, and it said Manchester Center for Gothic Studies. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, what the fuck is that? Like, is that an actual institution? Like,
That
what is that?
exists.
And I'm like, he's gay. He's in this documentary. I mean, I mean, I was like 100% convinced he was gay. I mean, and he is gay.
Okay. For the record.
For the record. And I immediately, that same day, wrote to the Manchester Center of Gothic Studies and kind of did like a far too long email that was like, here's my story.
Huh?
Here's what I want to do. And within like 24 hours, it was like, we think you'd be a great fit here.
Wow.
And so the Manchester Center for Gothic Studies is housed within Manchester Metropolitan University in Manchester, England. So it was just a process. It became just like, the formal parts of like applying and doing an interview and all of that stuff.
I
And
love that you
so
basically just cold called your way into a PhD program.
I did after many, many rejections, after many rejections. So, and it was like, thank goodness for that documentary. Thank goodness for Zavi being out there often
Yeah.
speaking for horror and gothic, everything.
That's the person you saw in the documentary.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep.
Okay.
Xavier Aldana Reyes he's a very prolific.
Mm,
I mean, at this point, honestly, I don't even know how many books he has because every time I turn around, there's a new one being published. I'm like, how do you? And he teaches, and he was head of the Gothic studies after my director of studies retired. It's like I'm like, how? He's one of those humans where I'm like, how? Like
yeah.
you make me feel really inferior, but that's about me, as you know, as a therapist. That's a me problem, not a Zavi problem.
Yes. Yes. Very, very
So,
insightful.
so Zavi became my, I have like the way they did it there was I had a director of studies, and then Zavi was my kind of first primary advisor, I guess.
Okay.
Something like that.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Such an inspiring story. And I love that, like, we'll get into the book and I'm interested in the people are interested in the statistics and the facts and stuff too. But for my money, it's like that personal story that is what really makes it super meaningful. Because yeah, it's so easy to write off academia or research as, it's just like people analyzing statistics and data and what's the point? But I mean, you have very clearly just laid out exactly what the point is. It's so freaking meaningful.
Yeah. And like academia can be, I kind of have dubbed myself like anti-academic academic in lots of
Mhm.
spaces. But I want to be clear, like I think that time, like in so much like academia is just privilege in different ways, wrapped in different packaging, right? So
Yeah.
the time to think deeply, to study, to have minds that you can go to ask questions, to have specialties and think about things that are completely outside of your world, your realm,
Hmm.
is incredible. That's incredible. Um, Much of the organization of academia in the 21st century, these are corporations at this point, and
Yeah.
it can be fucking infuriating. So, the like hopeful part of me is like, don't worry about rejections. I got so many rejections. I had so
Hmm.
many people be like, oh, this is a great idea, not here. This is a great idea elsewhere.
Yeah.
So keep watching horror documentaries. No, or go to the Manchester Center of Gothic Studies.
Absolutely. So I realized I've gone all this time and like I know the context of this book and what we're talking about, but I should have
hmm
had you introduce it a little bit to people listening. So like what's the elevator pitch of the study that you did that turned into your dissertation in this book, Queer for Fear?
So it's the largest to this day, it's the largest empirical study in all of horror studies. So
Yeah.
like I'm always like, go queers.
Like
Because that wasn't
four,
me. Like that's horror loving queers did that.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
for
4,107.
107.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you
I
know,
was one of them
oh
for the
well
record.
thank you. I was not. I wish I were. I wish it was 4,108. Um And the whole point of the book was, like I said, I built the idea off of Bridget Cherry's work for women in horror. And the whole idea was to move beyond the representational and the allegorical, which there are hundreds and hundreds of great essays and books about the representational, the allegorical, the metaphorical connection. I wanted to go to the ontological. I wanted to go like, why
Mm,
is it that, because at this point in time, I'm in my 40s. Why is it that when I connect with other horror loving queers, it moves beyond like we can understand the same film differently, but the way we connect to the genre feels connected. And it has this connective tissue that is baked into the essence of queerness. And I wanted to
yeah.
kind of get into that because that was not the conversation that was going on
Hmm.
in fandom And even in academia, that just wasn't what was happening.
Yeah.
So that was like kind of my pitch of like, I'm gonna do this survey and I'm gonna double Bridget Cherry's number. So I'm gonna get 200 horror loving queers to do this.
Oh my God, that was your goal at the beginning. You just thought you'd get 200.
Yeah, it was like I think I said my goal was 220 because I think she had 108 or 109.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm gonna double it. So that way it was like, you can't talk to me. I doubled this number. So when those
Did
numbers started coming in, I like literally was like, holy shit. And then I was already in the program at the time and I already went to like I had three advisors and I was like,
Mhm.
this is like my number before I've done any of the work. This number proves my point. That's how
Yeah.
I felt. I was like, all the rest is gravy. And then the rest became really like, lots of blood, sweat, and tears.
I feel like you could have written a dissertation just on the existence of that number by itself before
Yeah,
before
I
you even
mean,
got
yeah,
into to
I
all
probably
of the
should write
people's
an essay about
answers.
it, actually. Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, to do this work, I had to go learn things. Like I had to go take classes in statistics. Like, let me tell you that like all you mathematicians out there, all you statisticians, like fucking kudos to you because that shit's hard. Like I cried more than once. Like I was just like I hadn't done formal math like that in decades.
Mhm.
Like in high school, I went through it was like calculus to be like, I don't have to do this again, kind of. I was one of those kinds of persons. I'm like, I'm gonna get this done in my teenhood, so my adulthood is free.
It's amazing that you did it because, like, when I got my master's in counseling, as soon as I found out there was an option to just do like an externship instead of a thesis, I was like, nope, no statistics for me.
Yeah, it was really intense. And it was like, and like I want people who get stuck in academia, like, please, you can DM me at Queer for Fear and on Instagram. I like respond to everybody. Like,
Mhm.
if you get stuck, there are resources, right? So I was like trying to learn meaningful statistics in my 40s after being away from math in a formal way for 20 something years. And I just remember that first class being like, oh, fuck. I just was like, oh, this like and like nobody in the program was going to help me because like that's not what that program was about. Like, right?
Yeah.
There was no social scientists, no statisticians. And I was like, wait a second, maybe there's like a math tutor center. I spent the quarter or the semester, I think it was a semester. I spent the semester doing all of the coursework and then like I was like a fucking omnipresence in that tutoring center being like, help me really understand this so I can and all of that work was all of the stats isn't for horror loving queers. I mean,
Mhm.
any like nerdy horror loving queers who are into the stats and all of the like numbers I put in there, and they're all in there. And like
Yeah.
at one point in time, a known academic in the queer horror world was like, you should strip the book of all of the math. And I
Mm.
said, I can't because that's for all the naysayers. That's
Yeah.
for like, and I put like in the book, I have like a section where like I say, you don't like math? Let your eyes just go graze right over it. Like I'm married to someone who feels allergic to math. Like just
That,
fucking go right past it.
that's wonderful to
Everything,
hear
yeah.
you give that permission because
Yeah.
I think it is one of those books where like the information in it is fascinating. You almost have to give yourself permission to like pick and choose which parts of it you're going to really engage with. Because otherwise, yeah, you could get uh, on the one hand, yeah, you could dismiss it all if you're not seeing the numbers. So it's important to have the numbers there. But if you're telling people, no, you have to read all the statistics and understand it all, they'll miss out on all the kind of
Nope.
subjective, qualitative
Nope.
pieces of it.
Honestly, those numbers are there for straight people. It's literally those numbers are there for the people. It's there lovingly for the nerdy horror loving queers, and then it's
Mhm.
angrily there for the straight people. It's one of those things where I wanted to make something as air fucking tight as I could. So the
Mhm.
whole point of this whole thing was I wanted to empirically prove that queer people had a distinctive relationship with the
Mhm.
horror genre. Like
Yeah.
that is like if I guess that really would be my elevator pitch, I guess. It was just like but to do that, I had to have so many different layers and I had to like be like, okay, well, how do I bulletproof it for this? How do I bulletproof it for that? How do I show like all of these other horror academics who've been doing work for years or decades,
Hmm.
like we do have a distinctive relationship. And honestly, you should be centering us in your work because the way you analyze it is not relevant to how we understand it.
Yeah. I
So,
loved, I think it was a quote from Michael Verratti in your book that I'm not going to remember it perfectly off the top of my head, but he said something about like why our relationship with horror is so special is because on some level we recognize that it is our genre, right?
yes, yes,
Um, and yeah, you're right that it sucks that it's this way, but sometimes you do need the statistics to kind of back it up.
yeah.
Um,
And this is like I've never said this publicly. Now I'm like thinking, should I say this out loud? I'm gonna say it out loud.
yes, yes, please.
Um, I also thought it was important to come from not a man.
Mm. Oh yeah,
And it was
100%.
just one of those things where it there are queer horror scholars and there's nothing. I mean, I like really enjoy the scholarship of a lot of the male queer horror scholars,
Hmm.
but their focus is very much on their community. And and I'm not saying that not that they don't think and come, like, not, it's not like, God, I'm trying to say this carefully. It's not that
Don't be careful. You're
they,
not going to offend anyone. And if you do, who cares?
well, because I really do like some of these men and I do really admire some of their scholarship. It's just, at some point in time, I read like the newest queer horror thing and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Again, it's like cis white gay men. It's like once I get past the cis het white men, it was like the cis white gay men standing right there, feeling like they were trying to block the gates. I'm like, no, no, don't be a gatekeeper. No, I'm not saying that their scholarship is trying to gatekeep. It's not. They are just focused on their community, which can be very lovely.
Yeah,
But I knew
but it's not
I
any group. I'm one of them, right? I'm not going to pretend that I've subverted it or I'm above it. Just by the nature of our privilege, we're going to be in people's way, whether even if it's not intentional. It just is, right?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's no well, academically, there was no anger. As a person, as a human who loved horror, and as a human who had lived through years and years and years of midnight mass and T-Shack and all this stuff, I just fucking knew that it was more expansive than whiteness, more expansive than maleness. Like that
yeah.
was it. Like so, it was one of those things where the flip side of that coin is, you do years and years and years and years of work
Mhm.
and you go through all of this toil. And I did think that there would be, I felt like I would move the barometer somehow in the fandom discourse in a way that it just didn't happen. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's because of my casing, right? If it is, I don't, that, those are the things you'll never know. I won't know that, but
Absolutely.
I think about it.
It's all we can do is, yeah, just ask those questions.
Yeah.
Um, so, there's so much in your dissertation that it would be, there's no way we're gonna like do justice to all of it. But I guess I would start off broadly. I'm just curious, like, did any really big themes pop out of your research that maybe really confirmed something that you inherently knew, or maybe vice versa, something that really surprised you? Where you're like, oh, I did not expect that.
hmm well, the first thing that really, really, really surprised me was when the numbers started coming in and they were really big,
Yeah.
that women, lesbians, bisexual, like queer women were outpacing male responses. And in the end, there were more women, which my number one fear going into the survey when I was trying to get 220
Mhm.
was how do I make sure that I get enough different varying voices? I have to make sure that it's a kind
Can't just be
of,
200 cis
yeah,
gay men.
exactly. And I really thought that that might be a possibility. And I was like, how the fuck am I going to deal with that? Like,
Mhm.
I just didn't know, and it was like a problem. It was going to be a future self problem if that's what happened,
Yeah.
but that's not what happened. And you know,
And it's so cool that you didn't have to engineer that. That was just natural. It
yep,
just, you just put it
yep.
out into the world, and these were the people who engaged with it.
Yep, and it was a self-selecting like survey in the sense that a horror-loving queer had to decide if it somehow came across them at any point in time while that survey was alive to take it,
Yeah.
to complete the survey. And I had spent years before the PhD like building an online community, so I had like a small channel to like put it out. But that's not like the thing with a digital survey is that there's the snowball effect that I had no ability to analyze
Hmm.
how it just rolled out and where these people came from. And they wound
Yeah.
up being from all over the world, but of course, as a UK school and a US person, there was overrepresentation between the UK and the US.
Hmm.
I really wanted to make sure that there were plenty of BIPOC representation as best I could.
Hmm.
And it's hard because the internet does skew whiter.
Yeah.
It's also a privileged zone. So I did the best I could. And I always, in the text itself, I always encourage people that data set is open. Use it. Use it
Yeah.
again. Like, do studies against it. Do take stories out of it. I mean, there's 1,500 pages of data.
Yeah.
Like I want other voices to tell their stories because what the story I just went out for one story, which was, can I empirically prove that queers have a distinctive relationship to horror? And I do feel like this is like one of my moments where I can pat myself on the back. I feel like I did that. I feel like everybody else who is outside of the horror loving queer world can shut up and be like, read that and understand.
Hmm.
Yes. But I'm going to say this because I also know from doing talks, invariably, I think almost like 90 something percent of the time, the first comment comes from a straight woman who
Okay.
feels like I'm trying to take something away from them.
Hmm.
And I want to make this really clear. This is not a study set against people in a earnest sense. This is a study about horror loving queers. And I
Hmm.
had a goal to say, this does not mean that straight women don't have their own interesting special relationship. It's just different and it's not as ontologically baked into the tenets of the genre. It's not as transgressive. It's not as uncanny and haunted. There's
Hmm.
all these things that I speak about that are specifically queer. Of like black people have, horror
Hmm.
noir.
Yeah.
It's different though, because it's much more, we are still in a, incredibly racist country. So when you're dealing with horror, it's just a very different relationship and it's more barbed in certain ways
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's still, I mean, I don't want to say that being queer isn't real life consequences because we fought for a bunch of rights, got them, and now they're being, you know,
Hmm.
um,
Horror in real life.
yeah, it is horror in real life. What's going on in Kansas is a horror. What's going to continue to happen is a horror. Like literally, we have an administration trying to legislate us out of existence.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of shit like I didn't think I was gonna have to deal with that shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that is, when you talk about horror being uniquely queer, this is only just my personal subjective opinion, but what I've always said is that it's the one genre that's not afraid to point out that the world sucks
yes,
sometimes, maybe even
yes,
often, and that the world is really scary and really dangerous, and it can really hurt us. Um, and I mean, yeah, that's often what horror is it
yeah,
saying like, look at how scary shit is.
yeah.
So it's no wonder that we're drawn to it so like on such a deep visceral level.
Yeah, I like the things I'm proudest are basically being able to prove that. And I do feel like, I mean, I've had enough people try to, academically, once you put a book out, then all the other places review your book. And their goal, usually a review is trying to tear you apart. And I've had multiple reviews. I think I even had one review call it airtight, and I was like, yes, because
Ah,
like I put a lot of work into like trying to think through, my childhood trauma makes me really good at like catastrophizing, right?
yeah.
So I would try to figure out all the ways someone could try to tear this down. So
And you
I don't remember what I
anticipated
was
them
even
all.
saying.
Uh, so I know, again, there's so many themes I could pull out of the book, but like one of them that really resonated for me was the idea of how queer people in particular, we find that many of them identify with the victim, with the monster, many of them identify with both. Um, and that, again, you could probably talk for an hour about that, but uh, could you say something sort of about that general theme?
You
Like,
know what? I'm not picking on that question whatsoever at all, or that
oh no,
statement at
pick,
all. I
please.
find it fascinating that you might be like the 10th or 12th person to pick that one out,
Ah,
which is
yeah.
so fascinating because, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of different data points.
Hmm.
But that one people keep coming back to. And I think it's partially because monsters are fear given form,
Hmm.
right? And as you just said, the thing that the horror genre does so well is it says we do live in a scary world.
Hmm.
And we have all of these different ways of dealing with it. And we have all of these different ways of telling you, look at, you might not survive or you could survive, right?
Hmm.
Like there's all these different cathartic mechanisms within horror to do it. So when it becomes like with queer people, they feel like the victim. I feel like it's pretty obvious. And the survey has the reason it's 1,500 pages of data is I had lots of open text boxes in the survey. And I think I was pretty clear, like, you can skip the text boxes if you're a person who just does not want to write shit. Just
Like,
answer the other things and move on.
and like nobody skipped them. We all had to put our
And
2 cents in.
I mean, there were like people who wrote like their dissertations, right? Where I was like, whoa, and there was really personal things, there was really sad things, there was really fucked up things, there's all the things, and it's all out there. Go read them, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and in that, I think there was an open text box there, and people got to talk about how they feel. I mean, you literally got just little stories of being gay bashed, right? I was, gay bashed when I was young. I
Yeah.
think a lot of queer people, we all deal with microaggressions every single day, but
Mhm.
some of us have to deal with much worse things, and many of us never survive them,
Yeah.
right? So the victim part, it's like it makes so much sense because we are like queerness is positioned in a way it can only exist. The way queerness exists is because it's how normativity defines itself. It's not that, right? So we become victimized by that society, and we are also rendered the monster.
Mm.
But the problem is that so many of us little queers growing up with our little macabre senses and are like drawn to the darkness, we're like, but wait a second, the monsters are kind of delicious and I kind of
Yeah.
fucking love them. Or you have like Frankenstein's creature who you're like, wait, like he's the bad, wait, who, like, as like a little kid, you're watching it and you're like, wait, I'm pretty sure that guy's the bad guy. I think I love this guy.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's I say that in my therapy work a lot to clients that I think being queer in some ways I've come to think of it as it's almost like an inoculation. It makes us immune to certain things that other people in the world, I think, have just messages that people have just absorbed without questioning.
yes.
Whereas I'm not saying only queer people are capable of this, of course, but queer people are more likely to look at that situation, whether it's Frankenstein or whether it's reading a passage from the Bible that says certain people are going to hell and there's just something in us that's like, that doesn't seem right. Like, what's happening here? I want to ask more questions about that.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. I feel like there's a quote from a guy named Philip Core. Is like so each individual chapter of the book can be taken as its own little thing. So chapter 3 of the book is about like queer trauma and how queer people transform their relationship to the horror genre in a camp
Mhm.
relationship to horror. And for all those
Yeah.
people out there who get all like it's much deeper than just rendering something like funny, right? Like
Yeah.
so Philip Core had a quote. I should have it written down somewhere. Hold on. I don't want to misquote him. Camp is the lie that tells the truth. And
Hmm.
in the book, I argue camp is the way queers find a truth in the lie. And I
Okay.
think that speaks directly to your inoculation. I think that we have a way of constantly seeing the world and how it can be organized on all different levels
Hmm.
differently, and how there could be a completely different way of existence, which is maddening because we don't have the reins, right? So back to your specific question, I think it was almost 75% of people between monster victim and monster and victim were like, these are who we relate to. And so many people took the time to say it's context dependent. If the
Hmm.
killer is a human, I relate with the victim. If the killer is a monster, I relate with the monster.
Yeah.
And I think that that makes perfect sense. And that's exactly how I would have answered it, you
Okay.
know?
Imagine that. Context matters.
Yeah, exactly. It's all and you know, like we said earlier today, films are these products that like, you know, I just rewatched not a horror film, a film that like I had watched a bunch as a kid and I just rewatched it as an adult and I was like, what the fuck was I so obsessed with this as a kid? You know, everything changes. So you can watch I don't know, Halloween, the original Halloween on one night and be like, I totally see myself in Laurie Strode, like, or, you know, whoever. And then you can watch it another day and you had a bad day and you're just like, I'm
You
Michael
know, I'm
Myers and I
myself
just want to
today.
stab people. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I'm in a stabbing mood.
There's a time for queer joy and there's a time for queer rage and
100%. And I think that queer joy and queer rage are always kind of doing this. I try to find queer joy every day and I'm always rageful.
Mhm.
So it is one of those things, but I laugh through my rage.
Yeah, the camp laughter that you talk
Yeah,
about in your
you
book.
have to. You have to kind of keep going. And I think I learned through being in lots of queer spaces how important camp laughter is, how important queer
Mhm.
laughter is, how important it is to find like I'm of the age where I felt like when I was younger, too much of the, you know, LGBTQIA, you know, we were too siloed. It felt like academia again. I'm like, no, I don't want to be siloed. I don't want to just hang out with like lesbians. I want to hang out with all kinds of people, you know?
Yeah,
So I do like that we have moved into spaces that feel like we can be a little bit more like less siloed, but at the same time, we are losing so many physical spaces.
yeah,
And those spaces matter. All those third places matter.
yeah, for sure.
So,
This is a really random question. I don't even know if you have an answer for it, but it just occurred to me. Like, I feel like a lot of your research and like a lot of talk about horror has been focused on, how subtextual the symbolism is, like how subtextual the queerness is in horror. And we're really in recent years, we've moved into this world where there's so much more just text, right?
yeah.
Like people like Michael Verratti or Roger Connors, Peaches Christ are making movies that are just like, no, there's the characters are just trans. They're
Mhm.
just gay characters. There's no symbolism here, right? Or there might be, but that's kind of not the point. If you did your study like 20 years from now, when there's just a ton more movies like that out in the world, I don't know. Do you think the results would be super, super different? It's such a broad
I
question.
mean, no,
Sorry.
no, it's interesting. I think about it a lot because, you know, people will DM me a lot and ask for recommendations
Mhm.
of movies or ask for like what are my favorite queer horror movies and I'm like, "Well, what do you mean? Do you I mean, because like I'm always asked for explicitly queer horror even though
Mhm.
I'm the person who argued the entire genre is queer. But I think that at the end of the day, the overall results wouldn't change a lot because those queer makers, and like Michael's a friend, Peaches is a friend, like these makers, when they're doing their horror films, they're infusing in the horror films that are explicitly queer a lot of these tenets, the uncanniness, the transgressiveness, the hauntedness of queerness, finding connection ontologically within
Mhm.
the horror genre. So I don't think it would be that different.
Yeah, it might just be a
But
little more like obvious, right? You just wouldn't have
yeah,
to dig quite so much, but the same
well,
themes would come out.
when queers are making horror films, what's more interesting, and this is like the work that like Darren Elliott Smith does, what becomes more interesting is what changes. Because we're
Hmm.
not dealing with finding the queerness anymore. What
Yeah.
we're dealing with is what are the nuances of what queer people are dealing with, right?
Hmm.
So I like talking about Michael Varotti's film, There's a Zombie Outside,
Oh
because
yeah.
he wanted a movie where there was just like kind of a sort of depressed, kind of like monster where there was a queer, like in that movie, he's negotiating with Michael Varrotti and Michael Varrotti's work within
Mhm.
the movie that's a zombie movie where a queer person is just queer, but also not like an up gay, like
Yeah.
there's like a lot of like, you know, a lot of feelings of like good grief, like just, and I love that. I love that that's what like Michael is putting into his film, but it wouldn't change how Michael, I think, would answer survey questions about how he responds to the horror genre.
Hmm.
You
That
had
makes
asked a
sense.
couple of questions ago, like, what was surprising, and this is what I think if I were to do a study again like 20 years from now, is that, let's see if I can say this in a way that makes sense to people. Like queers who
Hmm.
are like cognizant of the fact that their queerness alters how they see the world
Hmm.
have the most special relationship with horror, like statistically. Doesn't mean that other people don't, just means that like statistically speaking, they have the most like distinctive queer connection to horror, and the way they relate to horror stands out amongst even the survey results of the 4,107.
Yeah.
And that was a majority of them. More people feel that way than don't. But the like nuance of that is the number of people, like, I've been doing Queer for Fear on Instagram. I mean, I'm not like great at it anymore because I just social media is very
It's exhausting.
complicated right now as we're like in World War III. I'm like, am I going to go tweet about something or post about something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I still do get DMs. And the thing I'll say is like the number of people, queer people, who have come to me and been like pissed I'm using the word queer.
Hmm.
And I say, hey, I get it, but I'm like fucking gray hair Gen X who feels the right to do it because I had that word slung at me plenty of times in a very
Hmm.
negative way. And I do feel like it's the most encompassing word for the community. I think it speaks to a politics. And I've had like, gay men come in and be like, I am a gay man. And I'm like, I'm really happy for you, sir. Like, that's great. They're the difference. Like, I think what I like wound up learning is that when you understand your queerness in a more politicized way and how it informs all aspects of you, that's when your relationship becomes even more distinctive. So it becomes sort of a like liberationist versus assimilationist kind of debate in some ways.
Yeah.
And that's the research I would love to do. But you're not going to get people to just be like, yeah, I'm an assimilationist, right? So,
You'll have to find a way to trick us into answering those questions.
but I mean, I don't think you'd be an assimilationist, would you? Do you identify that way?
Oh my goodness. I'd like to believe not.
I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
just like you saying to me that in your work, you tell your queer clients that you believe that there's this like ability for
Yeah.
queer people to see things differently and how things could be different. Like, I think that kind of proves that
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're forcing me to think about this in a way that I never have, which I like. I think the way I move through the world and my work, I am like kind of doing both things. I'm like trying to recognize and heal the harm of seeing the world in a different way because it does open you up to being hurt a lot.
Yep.
And then also recognize just how fucking strong and amazing it makes people to be able to step back and look at the world in a different way. It's like it's at the same time the most empowering thing in the world and sometimes the most lonely and scary thing in the world to
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it is. And that's why you need to write that book. Because I do think that like, this is not for all queer people. Like, to
Mhm.
be very clear, this is about horror loving queers. Like, that is like a group of people. Like, I have met queer people who are like, I can't. I can't. Like everything is already so charged and everything
Mm,
feels so scary. Like, and I'm like, I get it. Like whatever nature nurture combo you are, this is not for
mhm.
you. But then there's this other group where it's really for them. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is like being with On Me for like getting closest to 20 years. I remember on our first or second date, you got to do that thing where you're like, so what do you think about horror? And her answer was like, "Oh, I don't like horror. I can't watch horror movies." And I remember being like, "Oh, fuck, I really like this person. What do I do? What do I do? What do I
I
do?"
can I can change them.
Totally. I will systematically. And she's like it's like such a like my point really is that there are people who can grow into it when they realize like on me thought that if you liked horror, that meant that like wholesale, like you're someone like me, like I'm like a trash panda. I will watch anything. Like I will watch high arty art and I will watch like Slaughterhouse in the same day, right? Like
Yeah.
I will watch anything. I'm into almost any capacity of horror, even if I don't wind up liking the film.
Uh-huh.
And I said, on me. You don't have to watch everything. Like I just happen to be like a garbage person who like wants it all. You can be absolutely self-selecting. And a lot of queers are. And once they realize that like you don't have to like say you're not a like slasher person,
Yeah.
but you are a psychological horror person.
Mhm.
Like there's a whole world out there. There's a whole world.
Yes. Well,
And
I
it, and
say this very
it,
lovingly because you use the word. Thank God for trash pandas like you who are willing to go through all this and study it and put together these amazing books.
well,
Um,
thank you.
I want to recognize that I need to resist my selfish impulses to just keep talking to you and asking you questions. And I should probably start wrapping this up because my editor, Matt, is probably already going to be mad at me for how long it is.
Okay, okay.
But I have loved this conversation so much, and I think that anybody who listens, queer or not, is going to find this fascinating. Um, just to kind of ask the simple wrap up question, if you're someone who wants to be found, how can people find you? How can people find your book and buy your book?
The book is available through the University of Chicago. It's Queer for
Mhm.
Fear, horror film, and the Queer Spectator. And there's currently, for this interview, like there's a discount code, a 40% off discount code.
Okay.
So, shit. Fear 40. I think it's Fear 40.
You're
DM
40
me. If I got that wrong,
or
DM me. And I think it's all caps, Fear 40, all squished together.
all caps Fear
Um,
40 or message Heather
or DM me,
for help with a
yeah.
discount.
Queer for Fear on Instagram. And I mean this. I just did a talk not that long ago, and I said the same thing. If anyone feels stuck, if they want
Mhm.
recommendations, if they're thinking of going back into academia, you can DM me. I respond to
That's
everybody.
incredible because yeah, like we said earlier, like you're someone who's probably just going to serve as the mentor to the whole next generation of academics.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to provide something that you probably could have used 20 years ago.
Yeah, and the way academia works is you kind of can't just say things sometimes, right? You
Mhm.
have to kind of evidence something or show that you're building on something.
Yeah.
And I hit multiple spots where I was having difficulty. A, because it was a kind of weird project because it was social sciencey, but in the humanities. And
Mhm.
I also hit issues because it was a queer thing. And I did oral history, in-depth oral histories, which means you have to have like internal review boards, like
Mhm.
watching, making sure you're not doing abusive things because people have done that in the past.
Yeah.
But it changes the dynamic. So my whole point of this spiel is that read, if you're an academic, read the footnotes, read the book. I put in so many things that you can just cite me to bypass a bunch of headaches I had to live through. Because then you could just cite me and do the thing without having to figure out a way around the thing to do the thing.
Ah, I
So,
love it. I love
yeah.
it. You
Well,
heard it here first. Read the
yeah.
footnotes.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that in the actually I just like dated like there are end notes in the book and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of information for future researchers in the book, and I hope that it helps. I do.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, yeah, seriously, thank you so much for your time. And everybody listening, Heather is an incredible resource, an incredible person. So connect with them, read their book. Listen to every podcast that you hear them pop up on. It will be worth your while.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Heather, thank you. And thank you, everybody out in Macabre Daily World, for listening. All right. See you later.